They thought I was just another replaceable cog in their billion-dollar machine. Another pretty face with a fancy title who'd quietly disappear when the new CEO's son decided to play king. But what they didn't know was that I held the keys to the very system they were betting $300 million on. 6 patents, to be exact. Patents I never signed over. And on the day they tried to take everything from me, I made sure the world watched their empire crumble on live television. My name is Valerie Dawson, though everyone at Vmax Technologies calls me Val. I was 32, lead systems architect, and until that Monday morning in March, I thought I was untouchable. That was before Nathan Cole walked into my lab at 9:30 a.m., with that smirk that made my skin crawl. "So you're the famous Val," he said, looking around my workspace like he was appraising furniture at an estate sale. "Dad says you're brilliant, but between you and me..." He leaned against my desk, knocking over my coffee mug. Pretty faces are easy to replace in Silicon Valley. I watched the coffee spread across my keyboard, ruining 3 days of handwritten notes. Nathan didn't even pretend to apologize. He was exactly what I expected when I heard our new CEO, Charles Cole, was bringing his son into the company, another trust fund baby, who thought a failed meal kit startup qualified him to run a $3 billion tech operation. "You must be Nathan," I said, keeping my voice neutral while I cleaned up his mess. "I heard you'd be joining us for the Helix project." Not joining, leading, he picked up one of my patent plaques from the wall, examining it with theatrical boredom. "Dad wants me to streamline things before the IPO, starting with redundancies in the architecture team." Redundancies. I'd built Project Helix from scratch, an AI-powered real-time analytics platform that could process petabytes of data in milliseconds. Every major hedge fund in New York wanted it. The Department of Defense had already placed preliminary orders. Our IPO was projected at $300 million, and 70% of that valuation came from my work. "Interesting," I said, watching him put my plaque back crooked. "Considering the entire Helix framework runs on my proprietary algorithms." "Your algorithms," Nathan laughed, a sharp sound that echoed off the glass walls. "I think you mean Vmax's algorithms. You do work here, don't you?" That's when I realized he had no idea. Charles hadn't told his son that my 6 core patents, the ones that made Helix possible, were still legally mine. I developed them during my MIT postdoc, before Vmax hired me. The company had licensing rights, sure, but ownership. That was a different story, a story that required my signature on transfer documents I'd been mysteriously too busy to sign for the past 18 months. "Of course," I said, filing this information away for later. "Vmax's algorithms." Nathan spent the next hour explaining his vision for the team, which basically amounted to bringing in his Stanford buddies to inject fresh thinking while pushing out anyone who might challenge his authority. He wanted all system documentation uploaded to a shared drive for knowledge preservation. He wanted source code reviews with his hand-picked consultants. He wanted architectural decisions to go through him first. "I'll need everything by end of week," he said, heading for the door. "Oh, and Val. That includes your personal development notes. Can't have any knowledge silos. Can we..." After he left, I sat in my coffee-stained chair and opened my laptop. 6 patents, 3 years of development, one company betting everything on technology they didn't actually own. I pulled up my contract, then my patent documentation, then the licensing agreement that expired in exactly 27 days, 3 days after the IPO launch. If they thought I was replaceable, they were about to learn exactly how wrong they were. I picked up my phone and scrolled to a number I'd hoped I'd never need to call. Rachel Mears answered on the second ring. "Val. It's been what, 2 years? Rachel, I need you to review some intellectual property documents, quietly." There was a pause. Rachel was the kind of lawyer who made general counsels nervous, the kind who'd made her reputation taking down tech giants over patent disputes. "How quiet are we talking?" I looked at Nathan's Stanford buddies already settling into the empty offices across from mine, their laughter carrying through the thin walls. Dead silent, until it's too late for them to stop what's coming. The next 3 days confirmed my worst suspicions. Nathan wasn't just reorganizing, he was orchestrating a complete knowledge transfer. I watched from my office as he conducted architecture deep dives with my junior engineers, recording every session, demanding they explain every line of code I'd written. "It's for documentation purposes," he told Marcus, one of my best developers, who looked uncomfortable sharing back-end access credentials. "Val won't be here forever, right?" That Thursday at 2:15 p.m., I intercepted an email Nathan had accidentally sent to the entire engineering list instead of just his consultants. The subject line, Helix Core Extraction Timeline. The message detailed a plan to have a complete system replica built by an offshore team before the IPO. My system, my design, without my name anywhere on it. I forwarded everything to Rachel, then began my own extraction process, a different kind entirely. First, I backed up all 6 patents to encrypted servers I controlled, along with timestamped development logs, proving the technology predated my Vmax employment. Then I pulled every email where Charles or the board had acknowledged my ownership, including one particularly damning message where the CFO called my patents Val's golden eggs that were lucky to be borrowing. The real revelation came when I reviewed the licensing agreement's fine print. Not only was I not obligated to renew, but any unauthorized use after expiration would trigger immediate penalties, $50,000 per day. Per patent. That was $300,000 daily if they kept using Helix without my permission. Friday afternoon, Nathan called an all-hands meeting for the architecture team. He stood at the front of the conference room like he owned the place, which I suppose he thought he did. "I want to thank everyone for their cooperation during this knowledge-sharing initiative," he said, pointedly not looking at me. "We've successfully documented the entire Helix infrastructure. No single point of failure anymore." "That's wonderful," I said from my seat in the back. "I assume you've also documented the licensing dependencies." Nathan's smile flickered. "What dependencies?" "The third-party IP agreements. You know, the ones that need renewal before the IPO." I kept my tone helpful, innocent. I'd hate for due diligence to flag any compliance issues. "Legal has all that covered," he said dismissively, but I caught the uncertainty in his eyes. He had no idea what agreements existed. Charles had probably told him I was just another engineer with delusions of importance. After the meeting, I found Marcus waiting by my office. "Val, something's not right. They're asking for things that they shouldn't need unless they're planning to cut me out," I finished. "I know. What are you going to do?" I looked at my wall of patents, then at the Helix dashboard glowing on my monitor, my creation, running on my algorithms, generating millions in revenue from my innovation. "I'm going to let them think they've won," I said. "Nathan wants all the documentation, he'll get it. Every line of code, every architecture diagram, every deployment guide. I'll be the most cooperative employee Vmax has ever seen." Marcus looked confused. "But, except for one small detail." I pulled up the licensing agreement on my screen, highlighting the expiration date. "I'm not renewing this." His eyes widened as he processed the implications. "The entire platform runs on your frameworks. The API authentication alone makes over 300 calls to your proprietary methods. Without the license. Without the license, every single request fails. But here's the beautiful part. The system caches authentication tokens for up to 72 hours. So even after the license expires, Helix keeps running normally, until the cache clears." "When does the license expire?" I smiled, thinking of the IPO launch scheduled for 9 a.m. on Monday. "April 15th. Sunday night, April 14th, at 11:59 p.m., the cache will hold through the entire IPO presentation, right until they try to demonstrate the live system to 500 investors." Marcus whistled low. "That's legal," I said firmly. "Completely, undeniably legal. They want to replace me, fine. But they're going to learn that some things can't be stolen, no matter how many consultants you hire or how much your daddy owns the company." That night, I sent Rachel my formal decision, no renewal, no negotiation, effective immediately upon expiration. Then I activated system monitoring to track every instance of unauthorized use after Sunday night. Nathan thought he was extracting my knowledge. He had no idea he was building his own trap. The following week, Nathan's campaign to isolate me shifted into overdrive. He scheduled architecture reviews during my daughter's recital. Knowing I'd have to miss them, he moved my team meetings to 6:30 a.m., then expressed concern to HR when I arrived 5 minutes late. He even reassigned my parking spot to one of his Stanford buddies, forcing me to park in the overflow lot a quarter-mile away. Val's struggling to keep up with the new pace. I overheard him telling Charles during a Tuesday lunch they thought was private. Maybe she was brilliant 3 years ago. But the industry's evolved. She hasn't... The board loves her, Charles replied, sounding uncertain. The Helix presentation was a team effort that she's claiming credit for. Nathan interrupted. Dad, trust me. I've seen her code. It's good, but nothing we can't replicate. The consultants already have a working mirror of the entire system. That afternoon, I found out just how far Nathan's influence had spread. Janet from legal stopped by my office, looking uncomfortable. Val, I need to discuss your patent situation, she said, closing the door behind her. Nathan's raised some concerns about potential conflicts of interest. What conflicts? I kept my voice steady, though my pulse quickened. He says you've been withholding company property specifically, the patents underlying Helix. The board wants to resolve this before the IPO. I pulled up the employment agreement on my screen. Section 12, subsection 3, pre-existing intellectual property remains with the employee unless explicitly transferred in writing. I developed those patents at MIT. Vmax has a license to use them, nothing more. Janet shifted nervously. Nathan says you've been deliberately stalling the transfer documents. Because they've never offered appropriate compensation. Those patents are worth approximately $40 million based on current valuations. The last offer was $200,000 and a promotion I'd already earned. He's recommending the board pursue legal action if you don't sign by Friday. I leaned back, studying Janet's face. She'd always been fair with me, but I could see the pressure she was under. They can try, but maybe remind them that pursuing legal action against the person whose technology powers their entire IPO might not be the best optics for investors. Wednesday brought a new humiliation. Nathan had convinced Charles to announce a restructuring that put him directly over me in the org chart. My lead architect title remained, but now I reported to a failed startup founder who couldn't code his way out of a basic algorithm problem. It's just temporary, Charles assured me in his office, not meeting my eyes. Until after the IPO, you understand investors like to see clear leadership hierarchy. Of course, I said, watching Nathan smirk from behind his father's shoulder. I understand perfectly. That night, a junior engineer named David sent me a signal message. Nathan gave external consultants your admin credentials. They're copying everything to offshore servers. I screenshot the message and forwarded it to Rachel. Is this enough for theft of trade secrets? Not if they have a valid license, she replied. But the moment that license expires... Thursday morning at 11 a.m., the final board meeting before the IPO convened. I wasn't invited, but Marcus was. They needed someone who actually understood the technical architecture to answer investor questions. He texted me updates in real time. Nathan's presenting Helix as his vision realized. Claims he restructured your outdated architecture. Board is eating it up. Charles just announced you'll be transitioning to an advisory role post-IPO. Says you requested it for work-life balance. They're projecting $320 million valuation. Nathan's getting credit for the $20 million increase. I sat in my office, watching the lies stack up like cards in a house they didn't know was already falling. My patent license expired in 3 days. My monitoring systems were recording every unauthorized access. Rachel had cease and desist letters ready to deploy the moment the clock struck midnight on Sunday. At 4:45 p.m., Nathan stopped by my office with a stack of papers. Transfer documents, he said, dropping them on my desk. Sign them by tomorrow, or we'll have to consider this abandonment of your position. I picked up the papers, scanning the terms. They wanted all 6 patents for $500,000 total, with no ongoing royalties. The patents that made their entire $300 million valuation possible. I'll review these with my lawyer, I said calmly. You have a lawyer. Nathan's smirk widened. How entrepreneurial. But Val, friendly advice. Don't bite the hand that feeds you. After tomorrow, these terms might not be so generous. After he left, I looked at the transfer documents one more time, then fed them into my shredder. They thought they'd backed me into a corner. They had no idea I'd been building the walls around them for weeks. Tomorrow, they'd make their final move. And Sunday night, I'd make mine. Friday arrived with an ultimatum. Charles himself came to my office at 8 a.m., Nathan trailing behind him like a shadow with a vendetta. Val, we need those signatures today, Charles said, attempting a fatherly tone that might have worked if I hadn't seen the email where he called me a stubborn obstacle to eliminate. I'm still reviewing the terms with my legal counsel, I replied, fingers dancing across my keyboard as I implemented the final pieces of my contingency plan. What's to review? Nathan interjected. $500,000 for some algorithms you wrote years ago? That's more than generous. I stopped typing and looked directly at him. The licensing agreement generates $2 million annually for Vmax. You're offering me a quarter of 1 year's value for permanent ownership. The license is up for renewal anyway, Nathan said, his tone suggesting he thought this was checkmate. Sign the transfer, or we simply won't renew. Then you get nothing. I almost laughed. They still didn't understand that I held the power to not renew. Instead, I pulled up a carefully prepared spreadsheet. Actually, let me show you something interesting, I said, turning my monitor toward them. This is Helix's dependency map. See these nodes? Every single one makes authenticated calls to my patent-protected methods. The facial recognition module, 326 calls per session. The predictive analytics engine, 842 calls per minute. The real-time processing core, it's basically built entirely on my framework. Charles's face paled slightly. Your point. My point is that without a valid license, every one of those calls fails. But I'm sure Nathan's consulting team accounted for that in their mirror system, right? Nathan's jaw clenched. We've rebuilt everything from scratch. Your code is already obsolete. Really? I pulled up another window, the system logs from last night. Then why did your offshore team make 14,000 calls to my authentication endpoints between midnight and 6 a.m.? Why are they still pulling from my repositories? Silence stretched between us. Charles looked at Nathan, who was turning an interesting shade of red. Here's what's going to happen, Charles said finally, his CEO voice emerging. You'll sign these documents, take your money, and transition gracefully. Or Monday morning, you'll find yourself locked out of the building and sued for corporate sabotage. I stood up, matching his stance. Corporate sabotage. I'm protecting my intellectual property. Every action I've taken is legal and documented. Can Nathan say the same about giving external consultants unauthorized access to proprietary systems? Nathan stepped forward. You can't prove. Check your email, I said calmly. Both men pulled out their phones. I'd sent them a comprehensive package screenshots of Nathan's consultants accessing my personal development servers, logs of unauthorized code duplication, even a recording of Nathan telling the offshore team to strip out any attribution to Val from the codebase. This is what we call evidence, I continued. Now, let me be clear. I'm not renewing the license. That's my legal right. If you want to negotiate a new agreement, a fair one, my lawyer's contact information is in that email. But these transfer documents? Not happening. Charles's face cycled through several emotions before settling on cold fury. You're destroying your career over ego. No, I'm protecting what's mine from people who thought they could steal it. That afternoon, Rachel sent the formal cease and desist notice. Time to arrive at Vmax's legal department at 4:59 p.m., 1 minute before close of business. The letter detailed the expiring license, the required cessation of use by 11:59 p.m. Sunday, and the penalties for continued unauthorized use, $50,000 per patent, per day. By 5:30 p.m., my badge had been deactivated. Security arrived to escort me out, but I'd already packed everything important. As I walked through the lobby, several engineers watched from the windows above. Marcus gave me a subtle thumbs up. David looked terrified. Others just stared, unsure what they were witnessing. Nathan stood at the main entrance, clearly enjoying his moment of victory. Don't worry, Val. We'll take good care of your baby. Oh, And I'd avoid LinkedIn for a while. Dad has connections everywhere. I stopped beside him, close enough that only he could hear. Enjoy the IPO launch. Nathan, I hear you're doing the live demonstration yourself. A flicker of uncertainty crossed his face. So nothing. I just hope you remember that cash tokens expire after 72 hours. But I'm sure your consultants explained that when they rebuilt my system from scratch. I left him standing there, processing my words, in my car. I opened my laptop to confirm what I already knew: the license would expire in 54 hours. The cached authentication tokens would sustain the system through Sunday, all day Monday morning, right up until the crucial moment when Nathan would try to demonstrate Helix's power to the world. The trap was set. All that remained was to wait for Monday, 9 a.m., when Nathan Cole would learn exactly how replaceable I wasn't. Monday morning arrived with a storm of phone calls. The first came from Mark Brennan, Vaymax's general counsel, at 6:45 a.m. while I was enjoying coffee on my patio. "Val, we need to resolve this immediately," he said, skipping pleasantries. "The IPO launch is in 2 hours. There's nothing to resolve. Mark, the license expired last night. You received the cease and desist on Friday. This is extortion." "No, it's intellectual property law. You had 3 business days to negotiate a new agreement. Instead, Charles had security escort me out. We'll sue you into oblivion." "For what?" "Not giving you my property for free." I took another sip of coffee. "Mark, I like you, so I'll give you some free advice. Check if Helix is still running, then ask Nathan why he's so confident about the demo." The second call came at 7:15 a.m. from Charles himself. His voice had lost all pretense of composure. "Name your price." $40 million for all 6 patents, plus 10% royalties on any revenue generated using my frameworks. That's insane. That's market value. Or you could try running your $300 million IPO without the technology it's built on. The system is working fine. Nathan checked it himself this morning. I smiled, knowing the cash tokens were holding, giving them false confidence. Did he? How thoroughly? What's that supposed to mean? Ask Nathan about cash expiration. He has approximately 90 minutes to figure it out. I hung up and turned off my phone. Rachel had advised me to avoid any further contact that could be construed as interference. Everything that would happen next was simply the natural consequence of their own decisions. At 8:30 a.m., I opened my laptop and pulled up the tech news live stream of Vaymax's IPO launch. The venue was impressive, the grand ballroom at the Four Seasons, packed with investors, journalists, and industry analysts. A massive screen behind the stage displayed the Helix logo I designed 3 years ago. Charles took the stage at 8:45 a.m., delivering his prepared remarks about innovation, disruption, and market domination. The camera occasionally panned to Nathan, sitting in the front row, wearing a $10,000 suit and the expression of someone who'd already won. At 8:55 a.m., my monitoring system showed the first signs of panic. Someone at Vaymax was repeatedly trying to refresh authentication tokens. The attempts were failing, but the cash tokens were still serving requests for now. Charles introduced Nathan at exactly 9 a.m. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to invite my son, Nathan Cole, our Chief Technology Officer, to demonstrate the power of Helix." Nathan bounded onto stage with practiced confidence. "Thank you, Dad. Today we're not just showing you software, we're showing you the future of real-time analytics." He pulled up the demonstration interface on the massive screen. The dashboard gleamed with its familiar blue gradient: my design, my code, my creation. "Let's start with something simple," Nathan said, clicking through to the facial recognition module. "We'll analyze the audience in real time, demonstrating our capability to process thousands of facial recognition points simultaneously." He initiated the scan. For 3 seconds, everything worked perfectly. The system began identifying faces, overlaying data points, creating demographic analyses. The investors leaned forward, impressed. Then, at 9:03 and 20 seconds a.m., the first cash token expired. The screen flickered. Error messages began cascading across the dashboard like dominoes. "Authentication failed" appeared once, twice, then hundreds of times as every subsequent call to my framework was rejected. Nathan clicked frantically, trying to restart the demonstration. "Just a minor glitch," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "Let me switch to our predictive analytics module." But the predictive analytics module was even more dependent on my patents. The screen went completely black, then displayed a single message in red text: "Invalid license, access denied." The murmur from the audience grew louder. Charles stood up from his seat, his face ash white. Camera phones appeared everywhere, recording the catastrophic failure. Nathan tried to maintain composure. "We're experiencing temporary technical difficulties. If we could just..." But the damage was done. The main screen suddenly displayed a system alert that someone at Vmax had foolishly left connected to the presentation laptop. "Critical, all patent licenses expired. Cease operation immediately to avoid legal penalties." The live stream chat exploded. Stock futures, which had been trading up 8% in pre-market, crashed through the floor. Tech reporters were already typing headlines about the most disastrous IPO launch in Silicon Valley history. Nathan stood frozen on stage, staring at the error messages like they were written in a foreign language. Charles had pushed past security and was screaming at someone on his phone, probably Mark, demanding to know how this had happened. At 9:11 a.m., the stream cut to a technical difficulties screen, but the damage was irreversible. 500 witnesses had watched Vmax's revolutionary platform fail completely. The screenshots were already going viral on tech Twitter. My phone, which I'd turned back on, showed 47 missed calls and over 100 text messages. I ignored them all except one from Marcus. That was beautiful. Also, Charles just fired Nathan in front of everyone. The war was over, and they'd lost it the moment they assumed I was replaceable. The live stream had been off for less than 3 minutes when Rachel called. "Val, you need to see this. Someone at Vmax is still running queries against your framework. My paralegal is documenting everything. We're at $217,000 in violations and climbing." I pulled up my monitoring dashboard. Despite the public catastrophe, someone, probably Nathan's offshore team, was frantically trying to restore service by hammering the authentication endpoints. Every failed attempt was another violation, another $50,000 per patent. "Let them," I said. "Document everything." By 9:20 a.m., the tech world had exploded. The hashtag #HelixGate was trending globally. Someone had leaked internal Vmax communications showing Nathan assuring the board just yesterday that they had complete control over all technology assets. The contrast with the morning's reality was devastating. TechCrunch's headline read, "Vmax IPO implodes as core technology fails during live demo." The subheading was even worse. "Sources confirm patent dispute with former lead architect." At 9:35 a.m., CNBC interrupted regular programming for a breaking news segment. I watched from my kitchen as their tech correspondent explained the unfolding disaster to a stunned anchor. "What we're witnessing is unprecedented," she said. "A $300 million IPO has essentially evaporated because the company apparently doesn't own the technology they're selling." The anchor looked confused. "How is that possible?" According to sources, the entire Helix platform was built on patents owned by a single engineer, Valerie Dawson, who left the company last Friday after refusing to transfer ownership. The license expired last night, and without it, the system simply doesn't work. At 10:15 a.m., Charles called again. This time, his voice was broken. "Val, please, we'll accept your terms. All of them." "The price has changed," I said calmly. $50 million for the patents, 15% royalties, and a public statement acknowledging my role as the creator of Helix. That's growing by $50,000 every minute your systems continue attempting unauthorized access. I'm watching it happen in real time. Charles, your violation fees are approaching $1 million. Nathan said he had it handled. He said the offshore team had rebuilt everything. Nathan lied. To you, to the board, to 500 investors, and you enabled him because you thought I was just another replaceable employee. There was a long pause. In the background, I could hear shouting, phones ringing, chaos. "The board is meeting in an hour," Charles said finally. "They'll approve your terms. My lawyer will be waiting for the call. Oh, and Charles Nathan's consultant friends who stole my code. I have their names, their IP addresses, and screenshots of every illegal access. That's criminal copyright infringement. Rachel tells me the FBI takes that quite seriously." The fear in his silence was palpable. By noon, the financial press had picked up the story. The Wall Street Journal ran a piece titled, "The $40 million Engineer: How One Woman's Patents Destroyed a Tech Giant's IPO." Bloomberg's coverage was even more brutal, featuring interviews with investors who'd lost millions in pre-IPO investments. At 12:45 p.m., Vaymax's board approved my terms. The documents were signed within an hour. The first payment wired immediately. The public statement went out at 2 p.m., crafted by Rachel to ensure there was no ambiguity. Vaymax Technologies acknowledges that the Helix platform was created by and is fundamentally dependent upon the patented innovations of Ms. Valerie Dawson. We have reached an agreement to properly license and compensate Ms. Dawson for her groundbreaking contributions to our technology. Nathan's name appeared nowhere in the statement, according to Marcus, who was texting me updates from inside. Nathan had been escorted out by security before lunch, his company credentials revoked, his equity clawed back. The Stanford consultants had scattered like roaches when the FBI investigation was mentioned. By 3 p.m., I'd received 17 job offers from competitors, each trying to outbid the last. 2 venture capital firms wanted to fund my own startup. Microsoft's AI division sent a blank check salary offer, literally just a contract with the compensation line reading, "Name your price." I declined them all. At 4 p.m., Rachel called with the final tally. Between the patent sale, the royalties agreement, and the violation penalties, you're looking at $51.7 million, plus 15% of Helix revenue in perpetuity. And Vaymax? Trading halted after dropping 63%. Charles submitted his resignation an hour ago. The board is discussing bankruptcy protection. I felt no satisfaction in their destruction, only relief that it was over. They'd forced this confrontation, chosen this path. I'd simply refused to be another casualty of their arrogance. That evening, as I watched the sunset from my patio, my phone buzzed with one final message. It was from Janet in legal. "Nathan's LinkedIn says he's now seeking new opportunities in food delivery startups. Thought you'd want to know." I deleted the message and poured myself a glass of wine. Tomorrow, I'd start building something new, something entirely mine, something no one could ever take away. The king was dead. Long live the engineer who killed him. The aftermath was swift and merciless. By Tuesday morning, Vaymax Technologies had filed for Chapter 11, bankruptcy protection. The IPO was officially withdrawn. Investors who'd pumped millions into pre-IPO funding were threatening lawsuits. The SEC announced a formal investigation into potential securities fraud and misrepresentation of assets. I watched it all unfold from my home office, fielding calls from reporters who wanted the inside story. I declined every interview. Rachel had advised keeping quiet until all the dust settled and the final payments cleared. Wednesday brought an unexpected visitor. Charles Cole stood at my door at 10 a.m., looking like he'd aged 10 years in 3 days. His usual CEO polish was gone, wrinkled shirt, stubble, hollow eyes. "May I come in?" he asked. Against my better judgment, I let him in. We sat in my living room, the silence stretching between us like a chasm. "I need to know," he said finally. "Was this always your plan?" "No," I answered honestly. "My plan was to build something revolutionary and be fairly compensated for it. You and Nathan chose this path when you decided I was replaceable. Nathan convinced me you were holding the company hostage. He said you were deliberately stalling to maximize your payout. And you believed him over 3 years of my proven loyalty." Charles stared at his hands. "He's my son. I wanted to give him a chance to prove himself. By destroying me, I didn't think—" He stopped, shook his head. "No, you're right. I didn't think about you at all. You were just an employee, a brilliant one, but still just an employee." "That's where you were wrong," I said. "I was never just an employee. I was the architect of your entire future, and you handed my blueprints to someone who couldn't even read them." "The board is suing me personally," he said quietly. They say I violated my fiduciary duty by not securing the patents before the IPO. My lawyers say I'll lose everything. I felt a flicker of sympathy, but only a flicker. What happened to Nathan? Gone. Moved back with his mother in Connecticut. No one in tech will touch him. His name is toxic. Charles laughed bitterly. He blames me for not protecting him better. Sounds familiar? Charles stood to leave, then paused at the door. For what it's worth, Val, you were right about everything. The technology, your value, Nathan, everything. After he left, I returned to my computer. The wire transfer had cleared $51.7 million sitting in my account. The royalty agreement was ironclad. Even if Vaymax somehow recovered, I'd be earning 15% of any Helix revenue forever. Thursday's tech news brought another surprise. Marcus had led a mass exodus of Vaymax's best engineers, 43 developers, all walking out together, citing loss of confidence in leadership and ethical concerns. He texted me that afternoon. Starting something new, want in as CTO. I declined but offered to advise. They deserved a fresh start without my shadow over them. Friday morning at 11 a.m., the FBI contacted me. They were building a case against Nathan's offshore consultants for criminal copyright infringement. My documentation was so thorough they barely needed my testimony. The lead investigator, Agent Sarah Kim, seemed almost impressed. In 20 years of intellectual property crime, I've never seen someone document their own robbery so meticulously, she said. They were so confident I was powerless, I replied. They didn't bother hiding anything. The headlines that week told the story in brutal clarity. Vaymax bankruptcy, a case study in hubris. How one engineer toppled a $3 billion company. The real cost of undervaluing talent. Nathan Cole Tech's most toxic name. By Saturday, I'd received a call from someone unexpected, Jennifer Walsh, CEO of Emergent Systems, Vaymax's biggest competitor. I'm not calling to offer you a job, she said immediately. I'm calling to offer you a partnership. We'll fund your startup, no strings attached. Well, one string, we get first right of refusal on any collaboration opportunities. Why would you do that? Because anyone smart enough to build Helix and brave enough to protect it is someone I want as an ally, not an employee. I told her I'd think about it. Sunday evening, exactly 1 week after the license expired, I sat on my patio with my laptop, starting to sketch out ideas for my next project. Something new, something better, something built on a foundation where creators were valued, not exploited. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I almost deleted it, then saw the preview. This is Nathan. I opened it against my better judgment. I hope you're happy. You destroyed everything. My father, the company, my future, all for your ego. I typed back a simple response. I destroyed nothing. I simply stopped letting you steal from me. Everything that fell apart was built on theft. He never replied. As the sun set, I closed my laptop and raised a glass to the ruins of Vaymax Technologies. They'd thought I was replaceable. They'd learned too late that I was indispensable. And now, with $50 million and hard-won freedom, I was unstoppable. 6 months later, I stood in my new office, the top floor of a converted warehouse in South San Francisco, overlooking the bay. The sign on the door read, Axiom Intelligence, built on integrity. 23 of the best engineers from Vaymax had joined me, including Marcus as my head of engineering. We just closed our Series A funding at a valuation of $120 million. The irony wasn't lost on me. Vaymax's ruins had become the foundation of something better. That morning, October 15th at 9 a.m., exactly 6 months after the IPO disaster, Rachel called with news. The FBI case is closed. Nathan's consultants just pled guilty to criminal copyright infringement. They're looking at federal prison time. Nathan himself got probation and a permanent ban from accessing any proprietary software systems. And Charles settled with the board for an undisclosed sum. Word is he lost everything except his house. He's working as a consultant now, advising startups on IP risk management. I almost laughed at the irony. As I stood at my window, watching the bay sparkle in the morning sun. Jennifer Walsh from Emergent Systems arrived for our partnership meeting. We were about to sign a deal that would integrate my new framework, one I fully owned, into their platform. The contract was worth $40 million over 3 years. "You know," Jennifer said, reviewing the papers, "Charles Cole pitched me the same consulting services last week. Wanted to tell me all about the importance of securing IP rights before major transitions." "Did you hire him?" "God, no. But I did tell him we were working with you. He actually smiled and said, 'She'll protect you better than I protected myself.'" The signing took 5 minutes. Another fortune built on technology I created and owned. This time, no one could take it away. That afternoon, a profile in Forbes hit the stands. Valerie Dawson, the engineer who refused to be erased. They'd gotten most of the story right, though they'd never know about the sleepless nights, the moments of doubt, or the sweet satisfaction of watching that authentication system fail on live television. Marcus knocked on my door at 3 p.m. "Val, you need to see this." He showed me his phone. Vaymax's assets were being auctioned off. The Helix codebase, now useless without my patents, had received no bids. The office furniture sold for more than the technology they'd tried to steal. "How does it feel?" Marcus asked. I thought about it. Like justice. Not revenge justice. There's a difference. That evening, I held an all-hands meeting with my new team. Looking at their faces, excited, committed, valued, I saw what Vaymax could have been if they'd understood a simple truth: the people who build the future are not replaceable cogs. They're the entire machine. "We're going to build something extraordinary," I told them. "Not because we have to prove anything to anyone, but because we can. Because when you respect the architects, the architecture stands forever." As I left the office that night, my phone buzzed with one final message. It was from David, the junior engineer who'd warned me about Nathan's schemes. "Thank you for showing us we don't have to accept being undervalued. You didn't just save your patents. You saved all of our futures." I smiled, tucking my phone away. The parking lot was empty except for my new Tesla, a small indulgence after years of driving a decade-old Honda. As I drove home, I thought about Nathan's accusation that I'd destroyed everything for my ego. He was wrong. I hadn't destroyed anything. I'd simply refused to let them build their empire on my bones. And when they tried to take what was mine anyway, I made sure the world watched them learn a lesson as old as innovation itself. You can't steal the engine and expect the machine to run. Sometimes, you don't need to raise your voice to make the world listen. You don't need to pound the table or scream about injustice. Sometimes, all you need to do is pull the right string at the right moment and watch the tapestry they thought they owned unravel completely. They thought I was replaceable, but some things brilliance, innovation. The minds that create the future can never be replaced. They can only be respected, valued, and fairly compensated. Or they can walk away and take everything with them. I chose the latter, and I'd choose it again. The view from the top isn't about altitude, it's about perspective. And from where I stand now, I can see exactly what they lost when they decided I was expendable. Everything. Thank you so much for listening to my story of corporate revenge and justice served cold. I'm curious, where are you listening to this story from? Drop a comment below and let me know what country or city you're in. I love connecting with listeners from around the world. If you enjoyed this tale of an engineer who refused to be erased, please subscribe to the channel for more stories of workplace revenge and triumph. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever been undervalued at work? How did you handle it? Share your experiences in the comments below. Until next time, remember, know your worth, document everything, and never let them convince you that you're replaceable.